Welcome to the Punting is Winning podcast. Just two fans talking all things Hawkeyes. Here are your hosts, JD and Keith.
Welcome back, Hawkeye fans, to Punting is Winning, the All Iowa podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Keith, that's JD. Welcome back to the postseason edition for football, I guess, at this point.
Yeah.
The regular season is virtually a wrap. One game left with Army-Navy, which is always after conference championships and bowl selections. So I always look forward to that game, though, too. It's just a fun game to watch. But, let's cover last week's question of the week. Speaking of bowls, we asked what bowl you would like to see, what bowl matchup you'd like to see Iowa have this year. We do know the matchups at this point, so we'll reveal that here in a minute. But we did get a few that responded. Iowa-South Carolina rematch, or ReliaQuest Bowl. Another couple that said Iowa-Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl. I think I was preferring more along the lines of like an Iowa-Clemson, perhaps, just because it's somebody we hadn't played. But the actual reveal of the bowl game is Iowa-Missouri in the Music City Bowl.
Yeah. I'd like to be playing Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, that
would be college football playoff.
Yeah.
Because they are in with 3 losses.
Yeah.
But they are also conference champions, so I guess we give them a bye for that, right?
Yeah. I mean, they didn't get the bye.
No, they didn't get the bye, but they got in with 3 losses, which I was a proponent to keep people out with 3 losses. But I guess when you have 2 losses and you win, or you have 3 losses and you win your championship game, then I guess that qualifies you to get in.
Yeah, I mean it's subjective. I mean, a lot of people, SEC people, are talking about, well, we need to drop the automatic conference champion bid, which you're just wanting to change the rules because you didn't get in, and that's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, Alabama, you want in the game, you want in where everybody else is. Don't lose to Oklahoma by 3 touchdowns. A 6-6 Oklahoma team. Don't lose to Vanderbilt, a 6-6 team.
Yeah, and
those 2 games cost you.
Well, this just means you don't schedule hard out of conference. You're out of conference. It doesn't matter in this case. Your strength of schedule. So strength of schedule only comes into play when all things are even. If you were going up against let's say you were going up against a 9-3 South Carolina team, then yeah, strength of schedule or head-to-head comes into play. But you're not going up against a 9-3 team. You're going up against 11-1s and 10-2s and 11-2s. You lost 3 games. You lost your losses to 6-6 teams outweigh the 3-1 top 25 wins, because those are subjective too. Who is in the top 25 can be subjective at any point in time.
Mm-hmm.
But those losses, when you lose to teams that are 500, those count and those hurt worse than those 3 wins against those top 25 teams.
Yep.
Because I could beat the top 25 team. I could be 25, 24, and 23, lose to number 2, still say I've got a 3-1 top 25 record, and lose to 2 6-6 teams. Do I deserve to be in?
No.
If you want to go on the argument of strength of schedule, okay. Would you take an 8-4 team that went 3-1 against top 25 teams with a harder strength of schedule over a 10-2 team who has a lesser strength of schedule? You wouldn't take that 8-4 team over that 10-2 team.
Well,
I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
You lost 4 games. Your schedule may have been harder, but you still lost 4 games. That's like saying, oh, well, schedule the hardest one you possibly can, go 7-5, and you're in the college playoff because your strength of schedule is so good. No, it doesn't work that way. Sorry, Oklahoma, or sorry, Alabama, sorry, Ole Miss. That doesn't work that way. You can't just, well, we didn't get in, so we want to change the rules, which is what they want to do. And that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, they can have their opinion, and we have our opinion as well, but that's just ridiculous. We changed the rules and made it 12 so you could get in now because you complained because Alabama wasn't getting in enough, which they were. And now that they're not getting in, well, after you've changed the rules, now let's change the rules again. No, we don't cater to the SEC everywhere.
Well, ESPN does.
ESPN does because that's where their money comes from.
100%.
But, that's why I don't watch ESPN. I have no reason. I literally comes down to, unless I really just want to watch a game and I don't care about the results, I'll watch them. Otherwise, I don't watch ESPN at all.
Only if my team's playing on ESPN.
Iowa. And how often does our team play on ESPN? No, hardly ever.
Seem to be too often lately. No.
Yeah, we don't have a contract with ESPN, so they go out of their way to not have us on.
Right.
So it is what it is. But anyway, we can dock that next week a little bit more in depth when we have a little bit more time to talk playoffs and bowl matchups.
Mm-hmm.
So, but let's move into a little bit of basketball, and let's talk about the 2 games that the men played this week, earlier in the week against Northwestern and yesterday against Michigan.
Yeah, they played Northwestern home game on Tuesday. That was one of those games that Iowa had just basically ran away with the first half for the most part. I mean, they were up 17 at one point, Iowa was. Playing good defense, playing good offense, hitting the threes, really looked good. I thought, wow, this is definitely not what I expected. And then the second half showed up, and Iowa forgot how to play defense, and Northwestern made some adjustments, obviously. Crawled back into the game, actually took the lead. And then that set up the probably so far the shot of the year.
Yeah.
With less than 1 second left, Iowa inbounded to Josh Dix, who had a 33-foot turnaround prayer, basically.
Fall away 3-pointer.
And it sent Iowa to an 80-79 win. So there you go. If you look at the stats, Iowa led a lot of the stats except for they were out rebounded, which that's going to be a theme throughout the year. I'm not sure how many games Iowa's going to actually out rebound somebody, but in the Big Ten, it's not going to be very many, probably very few, in fact. But Iowa shot 55% from the field. And, they were led by Josh Dix with 22 points. So, the guy that hit the game winner was the one that led the team. And, they didn't shoot great from 3-point, 39%. It's not bad. But the problem with them lately has been free throws. I was not shooting free throws well. And I think this wouldn't have been as close of a game had they hit the free throws. They only hit 59% of the free throws, actually 58%. They had 12 turnovers, which is not a lot for them. It's up there, but it's not like over the top amount. I don't know. I thought Iowa played pretty well in the first half. I'm really excited about the way they played. I was thinking, wow, this is not what I expected, and pleasantly surprised. But it's like 2 different teams showed up in the second half. The Northwestern team that I expected and the Iowa team that I expected. And it just happened that Iowa just happened to have that lucky draw at the end to some would say skill, 33-footer with less than a second left. There's a lot of luck involved with that. But yeah, getting a win, you're 1-0. You start the conference season off 1-0, which hasn't been done at Iowa for a while. You usually go on the road and lose. That seems to be like the trend of the last several years. You have to look up at this point and say, yeah, things are looking good.
Well, and I think you put a little bit more perspective into it with the fact that Northwestern turned around, 3-4 days later and beat Illinois.
Yeah. This is going to be something too that I think throughout the season, and it's always this way, but it seems like it's worse this year, or it's been something that is a lot more profound, is that you're not going to win on the road. It is very, very, very difficult to win on the road. Mm-hmm. And it is so, and I was going to look it up earlier, but I didn't get around to it. How many teams each team playing 2 games in December, how many of those 36 games, 18 teams times 2, how many of those 36 games ended up with a visitor winning? Look at what Ohio State got just destroyed the other night. Purdue got destroyed. And they were on the road. All those teams were on the road. Maryland took Ohio State behind the woodshed for a beating. At one point, it was like 50 something to 28 or it was
like
bad.
20, wasn't it?
It was, bad. I mean, they kind of made it a little closer at the end, but it wasn't that close. And I mean, you don't expect Ohio State to go out and get just derailed like that when they beat Texas earlier in the year on a neutral court, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be very difficult this year. Just, expect to take your lumps on the road and hope to help that you can maintain home court.
Yeah.
And win as many as you can on home court. I mean, some of the lower ranked teams, some of the lower down the line teams, maybe the Washingtons, the teams that in the Big Ten that aren't expected to do well, will lose some games. Minnesota will probably lose some home games, but the top teams, they're gonna defend the home court. So, winning on the road is just it's like a coveted crown jewel, and it happens so infrequently.
Speaking of winning on the road, we went on the road for game number 2 of the week at Michigan.
Yeah, Saturday.
And, a lot closer game than I would have anticipated.
It started out kind of the way I thought it would be. It was 20-4 at one point. Michigan was leading, and Iowa just fought back, and they took the lead early in the second half, and then it was back and forth, and Michigan did take I think an 8 or 9 or 10 point lead. Towards with 4 or 5 minutes left to go in the game. And Iowa just fought back, and Peyton Sanford hit a 3 to tie it, and with 20 seconds left. And then, the controversial call on the goaltending with 4 seconds, 5 seconds left, whatever it was. Some people said it was, he hit it before it hit the backboard, and some say he didn't. And ultimately, it came down to the rest decision, and they went to the review, and they upheld it, and it was a goaltending call, and Iowa couldn't get a really good shot off at the end, and it ended up being 85-83 Michigan.
I think Price Sanford was bodied on that last shot, but again, as people say, they're never going to make that call at that point in the game. So, which is really sad, because I've always been a proponent of, if something happens in a game, whether it's a 30-point blowout win or it's a 1-point game at the time, if it's a foul, it's still a foul. It doesn't matter. I don't care what point of the game it is. If it's a foul, you've got to call it. I don't care if you've got 0.5 seconds left. If the guy makes the mistake and he fouls a 3-point shooter in that situation, it's a foul.
Mm-hmm.
You got to call it. You can't just let it go. And I don't like this thought process of, well, you can't make that call at that point in the game. Well, you got to. That's the point of being a referee, is you've got to make the calls regardless. And he didn't. And right. It's my opinion that he was fouled. Whatever. We had the same argument in the women's tournament last year in the Final Four with UConn. How do you make that blocking call or the charge call, whatever? It was a blocking call, I guess. On it was an illegal screen is what it was. Yeah. On UConn, when it was 12 seconds left or something, or 6 seconds left, they said, you can't make that call. Well, absolutely you can make that call. Basically, it became an advantage for one team over the other because of the illegal screen. And everybody in the world could see that it was an illegal screen after they looked at it a couple times. I mean, if you really were objective, you saw it. You said, yeah, she moved. But that's just, I'm just backing up your point, is you have to make that call no matter what time in the game it is. So, I mean, there's an example. People didn't like it. If it's a foul 5 seconds in, it's a foul with 5 seconds left.
Yeah, 100%. You're 100% right. But, Iowa didn't play really good defense. They allowed Michigan to shoot 55% from the field. And neither team shot really well from 3-point line. The saving grace for Iowa with shooting was that Michigan only shot 20% from 3-point line.
But again, Iowa would not hit free throws.
Again, 59% free throw shooting. That is not good. That is not going to win you games. You shoot 75%.
You win that game.
You're talking about being 2-0 right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, anybody that says, free throws are only, a small aspect of the game. No, they're absolutely one of the highest aspects of the game that you can get. In fact, there's times I yell at the TV. I said, looks like tomorrow at practice is going to be, everybody shoots 200 free throws, and every time you miss, you run. That's the way it would be for me. I'm glad I'm not coaching some of these kids are probably glad I'm not coaching, but at this level, you should make free throws. And I know you get tired and your legs get taken out from, you're really tired, blah, blah, blah. But, man, it's a free throw. It's not like somebody's in your face guarding you.
Yeah. Well, and also at this level, you should be playing better defense than what they play.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, the defense should actually travel on the road with you.
Yeah.
But again, Iowa out-rebounded 42-27. But you know what the good thing was? And this is a shocking stat. I looked at it twice. Iowa had 4 turnovers. 4. That is a rarity.
Yeah.
I mean, when was the last time you could say Iowa only had 4 turnovers? And then lost.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's
taking care of the ball. Problem is you didn't shoot the free throws well, or you didn't shoot great from 3-point line. You hit 33%. If you shoot up around 42%, which is, what you should be. Yeah, win that game. I think
a lot of it comes down to, you look at those games when they're really close like that, when they're a 2-point loss or a 1-point loss or 3-point loss. I think you really have to look at free throws at that point.
Yeah.
Because, what were they? 7 of 13.
Yeah.
If you go 10 of 13, you win that game.
I thought Iowa handled the 7-footers really well. I mean, for the most part. Owen Freeman's is he 6'9", 6'10"?
6'10".
And he's up against 2 7-foot guys, and there's really nobody else underneath the basket helping him out. I thought he mitigated the 7-footers pretty well. The whole team did.
Yeah.
So
the other thing that I would point to, we're still missing 2 players.
Yeah.
That would have played minutes in that game. And I don't want to harp on the specific player that doesn't bring you anything, but I would replace him with Traore, and I'm probably winning that game.
There's a good chance.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that when he is healthy, if I was Fran, I would have to take a really, really hard look at that and say, yeah, I'm going to go this way because you're not producing.
Right.
And again, we've talked about it many, many times. Some guys are just not starters. They come up, their role is better coming off the bench, and he is probably one that's way better coming off the bench. There's not the pressure or whatever you want to call it. I don't know that there's really pressure in starting. I mean, there is, but if you're that caliber of an athlete, there's really shouldn't be that pressure like that. But I don't know what it is, but he's got to be demoted to the bench. He's got to see his minutes limited because he brings you absolutely nothing.
He hasn't.
2 Big Ten games, you get 1 point.
Yeah. And and hey, if you're not a scorer, that's fine. Then be a rebounder. And he's not doing that either.
Yeah.
If you're not a rebounder, you're not a scorer. Be a lockdown defender. He's not doing that either.
And he looks lost at times.
Disinterested as much as anything.
Yeah.
It's like he's only going half speed, or he's only I'm just here for a scholarship. Get me out of here.
Yeah.
No. I don't know.
But right now you don't have the bodies.
Maybe he's hurt. Maybe he's got a hamstring issue or something. He's not running well. I don't know what's going on. But Iowa will take a break from conference till January, and they will come out Thursday night at home and play Iowa State. Number 6 Iowa State at this point. We don't know where they're going to go. If they're going to be up or down for this week. But right now, Iowa State's only loss is to number 2 at Auburn, and it's a neutral site tournament game, and they were up big in the first half, but lost by 2. Iowa's going to have its hands full with this game. This is going to be one of those games that they're going to have to play their best game to even stay in the game. I think Iowa State really has a good squad, and they can beat you with so many players. If one guy's not doing good, having a bad game, another guy can step right in and take over. They're pretty quality. I think they're a Final Four caliber team. I hate to say that because I don't want to say that, but I have to face the reality that they have a good squad over there, and they've got a good coach, and they're ascending right now. So, they took it to us last year pretty healthily, and I don't see a whole lot changing this year.
Yeah, I would just
the location
get out of hand early.
Yeah. I hate to be doom and gloom.
That's why they play it.
Yeah, they're going to play it, and hopefully Iowa can stay with them and, make a game of it. And it'll be interesting to watch. I'll probably watch it until Iowa gets down by, double digit 20 points or so. And then I'll be like, I don't know if I can watch this anymore.
Yeah, it's hard to stomach Iowa State, watching Iowa State and losing.
Sometimes, yeah. Most of the time. Yeah. We're going to talk about the debacle that was last night, Iowa women.
Yeah, I was going to say, we talked about Iowa 4 turnovers against Michigan. Let's talk about the reverse of that against Tennessee for the women.
Yeah. Breaking news, Iowa just turned the ball over again. Iowa went out to the it was a tournament. It was like the Champions Classic. Yeah, and they played in the Barclays in Brooklyn, New York. Lost to Tennessee. I'll give you the score, 78-68. Iowa was led by Lucy Olson, who was coming back from a 2-game injury with her knee being sliced open on the court down in Cancun. And she led Iowa with 23 points and had 5 assists. Addie O'Grady added 11 rebounds, and Hannah Stolke had 10 rebounds. Iowa led by 4 after the first quarter. They were tied at the half, down by 3 at the end of the third, and lost by 10 ultimately. Tennessee played one of those Dr. Tom Davis 1985 or 86, 87 Nolan Richardson 40 minutes of hell type of defense, pressure, constant pressure, and it was full court pressure. It wasn't 3/4 court. It wasn't half court. It was the whole gambit. You were pressured from the second that ball became an inbound pass to the second you made it or they rebounded. So I don't know that with Iowa you had the bench, and maybe you did and didn't use it, but Tennessee did have the bench, and they used every bit of their bench, and they needed to, the way they play. And I did listen to some of the post game with Iowa, and Jan Jensen did mention that they had tried to figure out a way to emulate the pressure that Tennessee presented to Iowa, and they worked on it through the week. But I guess apparently you can't replicate that in practice because Iowa just couldn't get it. Just passes. Some of the passes were very ill-advised. They, especially there was probably 4 or 5 passes underneath to Addison O'Grady, who, would have the ball thrown to her, which her hand was raised, and then the guy from the woman from the backside Tennessee defender would just run over and jump and grab the ball out from her hands as she was receiving the pass. And that happened, I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 times. Inside passes were lazy. There were several just lazy passes that were picked off. Iowa had 30 turnovers. 30. I don't remember even hearing anybody having 30 turnovers in a game. That's astounding to me.
That's like a middle school stat line.
And the contrast to that,
passes look very middle school passing.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm stuck in the corner. Just throw the ball out and hope somebody can go get it.
Well, there was one pass that Addison O'Grady threw. She was in the corner. She was throwing it towards Iowa's goal. There was nobody down there. She just threw it, hoping that somebody would be running that way. Lucy Olson tried to track it down, couldn't get to it in time. That was just, I was yelling, "What are you throwing the ball?" There's nobody there. What are you doing?
Lazy passes inbounds that cost them
there were so
6
many
to 8 points that just off the top of my head I can think of that inbound passes that were stolen and put right up for layups.
Yeah, it was very frustrating to watch. Tennessee only had 9 turnovers themselves, 9 to Iowa's 30. Tennessee had 8. Yeah, Tennessee had 18 steals. Iowa had 4. Iowa shot 46% from the field, so when they got shots, it wasn't terrible. To Tennessee's 39%, that's the only thing that kept Iowa in the game early, is that Tennessee couldn't broadside of a barn.
Yeah.
Iowa shot 21% from 3, and Tennessee shot 24% from 3, and a lot of those were late in the game. Seemed like they kind of got warmed up in the third and fourth quarters. And Iowa out-rebounded Tennessee 40-30. No, they had a week to prepare for this, and didn't.
But as they say, it happens. It's not like they lost a game to a 2-9 team.
Well, no, but I
they
think
lost
Iowa
to an
was the
undefeated
better
team. But
team.
it's a game that it's kind of like the men with Utah State. They went cold, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn in the second half, lost that game on a game that they very, very well could have won. Same with the women here. They just, I think I told you or texted you, I said, if we'd stop turning the ball over, if we cut the turnovers in half, we'd be running away with this game.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen.
Well, and the thing, too, is that, Iowa has just now given everyone in the Big Ten the blueprint on how to beat Iowa.
Yeah.
Pressure them.
Yep.
I hope that's not the case, and I hope that there's not a single team in the Big Ten that has the ability to put the kind of pressure on them that Tennessee did.
Yeah, I don't think they'll see pressure quite like Tennessee again.
Not like that.
Unless they place Tennessee again in the NCAA tournament or something. Yeah, so it's one of those games where you kind of got to flush it and move on. You got to work on it. You got to say, okay, no, we got something that we need to really, really work on, and that is our ball handling and our decision making.
Yeah.
Kind of makes you appreciate what Caitlin Clark did. And, she had a lot of turnovers in her career, but she also prevented a lot of turnovers too.
Oh, I guarantee Iowa would not have had 30 turnovers had Caitlin Clark been on the floor last night. It might have been 20.
Even if they'd had 20, they probably still would have won.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. No, 100%. I believe that 100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, the one game this week, not the way we wanted it to turn out, but they can learn from this and they will get better and they will work on the things that they need to work on. And sometimes a team needs to get a loss just to refocus and to say that we're not infallible and we can lose.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, South Carolina's lost a game this year already. So, I mean, they're not cashing the season in, and Iowa's not going to do that either. So, move on.
Season left.
Yeah, a lot of season. Moving on, and next game is Wednesday. The Iowa State again. The men play on Thursday. The women play on Wednesday. It is in Carver. That is an 8 p.m. start. And Iowa State was rated, I think, 22nd last week, and Iowa was 17th. So this is one of those games where you're going to have to defend down low because Audie Crooks is their main player. Not that they don't have other really good players. I think this is a toss-up. I think you could go either way on this one. If you went by common opponents, I think this is an Iowa win. With Iowa being at home, that does help.
Mm-hmm.
But they've got to work on getting those silly mistakes taken care of, those lazy passes, unforced turnover. You have to value every possession as if it's your last. Yep. And make sure that, if you're going to miss a shot, that's fine, miss a shot. But don't give the ball to them before you even have a chance to shoot the ball. You can't have the turnovers like we had last night. That's just...
You gave up 30 possessions.
Yeah.
If you score 2 points on a third of those,
mm-hmm.
That's 20 points.
Yeah.
That's a 10-point win.
Yeah.
It's just simple mathematics.
I mean, we were just sitting there I was screaming at the TV, how in the world are they allowed? I mean, how are they doing this? Why are they? I thought this was a better team, handling the ball, but I guess they're just going to have to work on handling the ball and work hard in practice, I guess, get better at this.
Maybe they need to talk to Fran and how he employs the full court trap and whatnot. Just see how how do you dribble out of that? Because I saw a lot of people that just didn't know where they were supposed to be. You get a double team on the ball handler, somebody's open, but that somebody's probably the one standing under the basket because she's not moving. Mm-hmm. Instead of coming back to help out, that's just, I don't know. Again, hopefully that's something that gets fixed, and it's just one of those things that this is just an anomaly of a team that plays really, really good full court defense, does 40 minutes a game, and you lost because you couldn't keeping a handle on the ball, but realized that, we turned the ball over 30 times. We still only lost by 10 and had a very good chance with 3 minutes to go to still win that game.
Yeah.
So,
I'd always heard an adage that the teams that pressure don't like to be pressured. So maybe Iowa should have employed a 3/4 court pressure.
Something.
Problem with that is that they had the horses to run it with their bench. Iowa did not have the horses to run that. So, they were conserving their energy as much as possible with at least the 7 or 8 players that Iowa played. Tegan Mulaney didn't play a whole lot. She did get 3 points. There wasn't a lot off the bench this time. I mean, Sydney Falter didn't even score. Did she even score? I didn't look at the scoreboard, but I don't remember
she did
scoring.
Because she got a rebound off of a long miss when nobody was around. She put a layup.
Okay, yeah, that's right. She did get 2 points. So really, I mean, we're not getting a lot out of her at this point. I realize her knee and that stuff, and she'll get better. And she hasn't practiced as much as the other girls have, and all that stuff. So I don't know. We'll move on from it. We'll root for better things in Iowa State, and hopefully we'll turn the tables around and get a win, get back on the winning track.
I agree.
So we do have a special guest going to be talking about Iowa wrestling, the University of Iowa wrestling, and probably some of the Big Ten and just just wrestling in general. And he will be joining us soon tonight, and we'll be getting him on here directly. So we'll invite him in.
All right.
We are pleased to be joined by a very special guest who is a wrestling aficionado, knows much more than we will ever know about wrestling, probably. This is Worm Buffelli. He has his own podcast in the east side of the state, and he does some coaching. And I'm going to turn this over to him, and I'm going to basically let him tell you about himself and what he's doing right now. And that way you can decide how much we know and how much more he knows than we do. So, Worm, if you want to go ahead and tell everybody who you are and what you're about.
First, guys, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm Worm Buffelli. I host a wrestling podcast called the Weighing In with Worm podcast. It's a wrestling podcast that focuses more on the eastern Iowa side, specifically Dubuque County. We talk about the high schools in the area, our D3 colleges in UD and Loras. And then also, we talk about the history of Dubuque County, because Dubuque County has had some of the better wrestlers come in the area of our podcast. We've had some of the better wrestlers come out of the state, get national champions like Cliff Moore, Eric Juergens, and then, All-Americans like Max Lyons from Purdue, Gannon Gremmel from Iowa State in recent years. Boo McDermott just finished his college career at Oregon State. So, we're kind of in a hotbed of wrestling up here. So, that's kind of where my podcast is. But prior to that, I was a high school wrestler, wrestled at Loras College. I coached at Wahlert Catholic for 10 years. We were a state championship team in 2018. And from the time I was probably old enough to be on a wrestling mat, I'm a diehard Iowa wrestling fan. I mean, to a point, season ticket holders, we've been, been down the room a couple times. I have friends a couple of friends on staff. I feel like I do my research pretty well on Iowa wrestling.
Sure. Yeah, I've talked to you in the past before, and you know a lot more about wrestling, especially from an Iowa standpoint, than basically anybody else I've ever talked to. So I knew that you would be a good fit to come on the show. Let's talk about the University of Iowa. What is the national perception of Iowa? Obviously, we've got a ton of national championships, but right now the landscape of wrestling. How is the landscape of wrestling right now and how as it pertains to the University of Iowa?
First things first is what Iowa has done really well in the last probably 3 years since NIL has been a big thing. They have played the portal very well. Since NIL started becoming a thing, they got guys like Real Woods, who was an NCAA finalist for the Hawkeyes. They got guys, we got picked up Michael Caliendo out of North Coast State with Jared Franek last year. This past year, we went bonkers when we got Kyle Parko, a 4-time All-American out of Arizona State. Ja'Cory Teamer, who was a 4-time All-American out of Arizona State, NCAA finalist. We'll talk about him in a little bit. And then also we got Stephen Buchanan out of Oklahoma, who's a 2-time third-place finisher at the NCAA tournament. So that's got the big perception is with Iowa is it's good and bad. I mean, for Iowa wrestling is very similar to Alabama football in my aspects. You either love them or you love to hate them. And if you're not an Iowa fan, you're the first. You hop on X and you hear just constant things. Big thing: Tom and Terry are nothing but robots. They are, they don't take anything. They're not fun. They don't have any fun in practice. They just break their guys down to the bone. And then a big perception is too that they just aren't relatable. But if you've seen an Iowa duel in the last 2-3 years, I don't think there's any more entertaining coaches than Tom and Terry Brands. I mean, those guys are like, they're starting to, they definitely are aware of the perception of them being robots, and they are almost going against that. Like, there was a clip on Twitter a couple weeks ago. They're up at Oregon State wrestling, and Terry Brands starts chirping with the fans, and he's not doing it to be like, and part of my language, but an asshole or anything like that. He looks back at him and smiles. Like, those fans, are never going to probably see Tom and Terry in person, realistically. So when they're at a school like Oregon State or down at Bellarmine in Kentucky a couple weeks ago, they're going to make sure that they get the full Brands experience. And it is an experience. I mean, if you've ever gone to an Iowa duel, you see them. They're right in the ref spaces. They are right on the table spaces. They are constantly chirping. And I personally love it. I mean, and the counter of that is, like, people are like, oh, Penn State has so much fun, all this stuff. Penn State right now is the Iowa of old. They just ring out national championships. They have guys that are coming off the bench that are, winning national titles. But if you ever watch their corner's boring. Like, they just sit there, it's like, you can't really have it both ways. You can't call Tom and Terry robots and then look at Kale, who I have nothing but respect for, and be like, how's that? Sure. Because they play dodgeball at the beginning of practice. Like, that's what you call fun. Yeah, winning's fun too, and they do a good job at that. But Tom and Terry, Iowa is right there too. I mean, and right now, it's the big perception is that Iowa is a place where you have to be there's no fun, no one has fun. It's kind of it becomes a full-time job type thing. And I see it, but I also see it from a different perspective. Like, hey, I'm sorry guys, like, this isn't a little kids wrestling club. Like, you're not going to college to play dodgeball. You're there to win national titles. And that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Iowa's number 2 rated right now in the national rankings. What can they do? What do they need to do to topple Penn State? What is the thing that Iowa is lacking that's going to keep them from the national championship this year?
Big thing always. It always seems like, it kind of goes back to that Gable Iowa style mentality of out training your opponents, outworking your opponents, all that stuff. It's starting to kind of bite them in the butt a little bit. Not so much in the last couple of years, but and especially I'd say 22 was a really bad example of it, where, the Big Ten, we had probably 4 or 5 guys injury defaulting out of the Big Ten tournament because they were so beat up. And I mean, and there's a lot of factors to that. I mean, a lot of those guys were, 5th, 6th year guys off the COVID eligibility. Some guys we got medicals out of it too. So these guys were pretty worn down by the time they were getting there. So big thing is for them, they got to stay healthy. They got to stay healthy throughout the entire year. And I think that's a new rule that, I don't know if you guys knew this, but last year they implemented this new rule that freshmen can wrestle up to 5 competitions attached before they declare their red shirt. So, but okay. The caveat or the counter to that is first semester, if they are even to go, like, say, the Luther Open, Angelo Ferrari, who we'll talk about in a little bit, he, like, as a freshman, he has to go to Luther Open wrestling for Iowa. He can't wrestle unattached until second semester. So if they go to Luther Open, that's one of their rollouts. It works great though in a situation like Saturday night or Friday night. They wrestled Princeton and Army, and they had a couple guys out with some flu and some dinged up. They threw a couple true freshmen in there that got to see the mat, and also you got those older guys, kind of pulled back a little bit, so then they can kind of get a little bit more rest in it because, I mean, we're only in December and it's a long way till March. And all.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say also, and then just the national tournament, man. That's the for as good as Iowa has to wrestle, Penn State has to, leave a couple guys, on the floor. But I mean, realistically, it's gonna be a hard hunt. I mean, last year they had 3 guys that didn't place, and they still beat the field by close to 100 points. Like, I mean, it's bonus points are huge, and we don't have the bonus point guys like the Spencer Lees of old, where you were getting 6s almost across the board. So bonus points are huge in the national tournament. They got to perform really well. They got to wrestle above their seeds, and ultimately too, you got to beat some Penn State guys along the way.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be the best. You got to be the best, right? Okay, so Iowa and Penn State that seem like the cream of the crop. What other Big Ten schools do have basically competitors that would be comparable to Iowa?
Off the top of my head, Michigan. Michigan beat Iowa last year in a duel.
Michigan.
They do a really good job playing the portal as well. They're not having quite the success they had they did last year with it, but if you're Ohio State's right up there too. Ohio State has a young group of guys, led by Jesse Mendez, who won national tournament last year as a sophomore, and they got a lineup that's tough. So when you're looking at the Big Ten, it's pretty much those 4: Penn State, Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan, and then the rest are always going to be competitive. They're always going to field guys that they'll squeak them All-American through every program pretty much. Besides Northwestern, I mean, but let's be realistic. Northwestern's a D3 school in the Big Ten conference. I throw shade at Northwestern all the time.
Yeah. Okay. Now here's the question. A lot of people are probably thinking, Iowa or the Big Ten has expanded to 18 teams, and I know not every Big Ten school has wrestling. Does the 4 that entered the Big Ten, do they have anything as far as wrestling? Will they present a team? Oregon, Washington, and USC and UCLA. Will they have a team? Will they send somebody to Iowa to play?
I'm not sure.
Wrestle?
Oregon, I will always have as much as I love Oregon football in my early 2000 days of the cool jerseys and all that stuff. I also have one of the biggest bad tastes in my mouth because Oregon dropped their wrestling program in 2007, and they have people out in Oregon that want that program back. That school's funded by Nike, guys. Like, how can you tell me that they don't have freaking money to do that? So that's obviously a choice by their athletic department not to have a team. I personally think out of those 4 schools that got added, the 2 most realistic schools that you could get programs back would be Oregon and USC. I think USC would be a absolute cash cow of a program to get because California is one of the toughest states when it comes to wrestling. They wrestle 1 class in high school. So every school from NoCal down to San Diego, they all have to wrestle the same way or the same class. So, you could pluck a 4-timer out of California, that's a big deal. That's a big get. And if you're in, that was a conversation they were having when these 4 teams joined, was like, if USC started a program, do they go after like a Jordan Burroughs or a huge name in the sport of wrestling to run that program? You put in, then and realistically anymore, guys, you can start a wrestling program in Division I college wrestling. I think so much easier than a couple years ago because of the transfer portal. If you have an athletic department and boosters that want to build a winning program, You can go out and get that first year program. You can go out, get 4 or 5 guys out of that portal that are national qualifiers, round of 8 guys, or spend a little extra, get an All-American that's entering the portal to build off of. Then you go recruit those seniors, those junior seniors, and you make something happen. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. Little Rock or Arkansas Little Rock just started a program 2 years ago, and they have a team with 3 All-Americans on it of homegrown guys. But if they all of a sudden they get some booster down there that wants to throw some money, and all of a sudden they get a transfer, that's game over. That's a guy. That's a top 10 team.
Yeah. Okay, so let's refocus back to Iowa. Is there an Iowa wrestler that we as a wrestling nation need to keep an eye on? Is there somebody that is going to come out of the woodwork that we don't know who they are right now? That's going to be a big name, either be a young guy or either maybe it's a guy that's been kind of waiting in the wings for his opportunity. Is there anybody that we're going to be sitting back there talking to him as a household
for sure
name?
I got a 2-parter here for you. We have for guys out of the woodwork, it's Patrick Kennedy. He has been he's been one of the biggest victims of the COVID eligibility thing, realistically, because he came in that COVID year. Marinelli ended up having, it was supposed to be, he had redshirt. Marinelli wrestled that year. Marinelli's out. The COVID year happens. Marinelli stays an extra year. He burns a year there. Then he comes in the lineup, does fine. I think he was a round of 12 guy his first year out. Then they bumped him up to 174. His natural weight's 165. They bring in Michael Caliendo. And then Kennedy's kind of been, kind of a backup hammer. And we're going to find out here in about 2 weeks, I think, at Soldier Salute between him and Nelson Brands. I love Nelson Brands. I've watched that kid since he was a freshman in high school. But I think that, he had that year off last year because of the gambling situation. 6 years in the Iowa room can take a toll on someone. Kennedy's one of those guys that I think he scores in bunches. He puts on a lot of big points. If he ends up being the guy this year, if he ends up being the guy at 174, I think he's a 5 to 8 guy. And right now, I don't see Nelson doing that. Even though Nelson is a returning All-American from 2 years ago, I don't see that Nelson Brands right now. I see a Patrick Kennedy that could be a 5 through 8 guy. The second part of this is a freshman right now we have in Angelo Ferrari. His brothers were at Iowa last year. Kind of left a bad taste in some Iowa guys or the Iowa fans' mouths, but they left. But Angelo stayed. Tom and Terry really put an emphasis on, hey, you're the guy, and he knows he's the guy. From what I garner on his interviews, I think he understands that he's got to separate church and state right now with his family and wrestling. They wrestled him against Iowa State at 184. They put him out. They put him out at 184, and he majored a guy that was a 3-time NCAA qualifier. So he beat him by 8 points. I don't think he's going to start this year. The lineup wise, I don't think that with Gabe Arnold at 184. If you guys haven't got a chance to watch Gabe Arnold yet, he's a freshman too. That redshirt freshman. He is a stud. He's going to be a guy probably in this next year or two. He's a top 3 guy at 184, 174, depends on where they go with that. But when you put Angelo Ferrari in that lineup, he's going to score a lot of points. He's going to make a lot of things happen.
Outstanding. Let's look at this from the state of Iowa standpoint. Does Iowa have a wrestler? I know Iowa is from a high school standpoint, Iowa is a hotbed of wrestling. And is there anyone that's on Iowa's lineup right now that would be a name that people would know from either last year or the last 2 years that maybe was a state champion?
Yeah.
Anyone like that?
Heavyweight, Ben Keeter, 4-time undefeated state champion.
Oh, sure.
He is a junior world champ, or 20 and under world champ. This past year, he went back out there at the U20 again and took silver. Lost to an eventual world medalist. He wrestled the senior circuit after that. And so he's a guy, he's a football guy too. He's doing both sports. This year he decided to focus on wrestling. And from what I see right now with him, I mean, he's 6'4", 230 pounds. I still think I can't believe I have to say this, but he still has to hit the weight room. He's still got to put on a little bit of extra meat there. He wrestles a very lightweight style, which for heavyweight, it's a really good thing. He's one of those guys this year. I haven't seen anything yet that I'm like overly impressed with where I'm like, yeah, he's a 5 through 8 guy. I'm saying 5 through 8, 5th place through 8th place. If anything, I think he's a round of 12 guy this year. Maybe he's in that blood round situation where, given on what side of the bracket he's on, barring upsets, he could punch through. But there's nothing I've seen quite yet where I'm like, he is a guy right now. Now, 2-3 years from now, I could be eating my hat. He's a very good wrestler. He is proven on the international circuit. So I think it's just a matter of still adjusting to being a full-time wrestler, putting in some extra weight on, and just kind of rolling through the Division I heavyweight schedule.
Sure. Okay, so let's roll with this. What does Iowa have coming up as far as wrestling meets and tournaments and that kind of thing that that Iowa fans need to be aware of, and things that are happening on the horizon that we should be aware
of? Coming up here in 2 weeks, or during Christmas break, they host the Soldier Salute at Extreme Arena. They bring in probably 12 to 16 teams. But realistically anymore, this is Iowa's wrestle-offs. They bring in teams. Some teams bring their full lineups. Some guys, or some teams like you and I, they just bring their freshmen, their backups in to get matches in and stuff like that. Wyoming will be there. We have some Iowa tie there with Aiden Noonan coming in. He'll be competing out there as well. But for the most part, the questions that we have at 74, the questions we have at 157 right now, because Ja'Cory Teamer, it looked like he blew his hamstring. I'm not a doctor, but from what I saw, he's a 4-time All-American. He was ranked number 1 in the country, blew his hamstring out during the Iowa State duel. So we're going to have to figure out who the 57-pounder is going to be up until he's ready, or who's going to be there for the foreseeable future. So the Soldier Salute there, and then they come back around the first, second week of January. That's when we start our Big Ten schedule. Real big ones off the top of my head. I know Ohio State is usually the 3rd week of January. Illinois is the 2nd week of January. Then Penn State is usually Valentine's Day weekend, because that's always the last Big Ten duel they have, and then they roll into Oklahoma State. They always end the season with Oklahoma State in a non-conference. So if you have an opportunity to either, first, Soldier Salute's going to be on Big Ten Plus subscription apps. All the rest of the duels will be Friday nights at 8:00. For the most of them, that will be on TV, or Sundays, depending on the schedule. Okay. But Penn State will be primetime, 8:00. And then Oklahoma State, I believe, is a Sunday duel. So if you get an opportunity to go to Carver to watch, especially Oklahoma State's in town, Ohio State's going to be in town, get to Carver and watch those, because those duels are always electric, especially Oklahoma State.
Yeah. You're going to always have a ruckus crowd at Iowa. They support the wrestling team like no other. They are just crazy fans.
I've been to some of the best. I've been to Iowa Penn State. I've been to Iowa State. I've been to Iowa Oklahoma State in years past, and there's nothing like it. I mean, I said to someone the other day, I almost want to go down to Tuscaloosa one time to go to an Alabama game just to see what that crowd's like. I've been to Kinnick. Kinnick's loud. Kinnick's fun, but there's something about a Pat Carver Hawkeye watching Iowa wrestling wrestle a rival team like Penn State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and now the fact that they sell Busch Light in Carver, it just makes it even more rowdy. I mean, my goodness,
it gets everybody lubricated.
Yeah. I don't have to go to the airliner anymore.
Quick question. Forgive my ignorance. Have we already had the Midlands?
We actually. So Midlands have kind of died out. In the 90s, in the 90s, or the 80s and 90s, the Midlands, in the early 2000s, the Midlands were the cream of the crop tournament. And then it just kind of started dying out, especially when teams started doing this like reverse of less is more matches. You look at Penn State, some of these guys, they'll roll in the national tournament with 15, 16 matches. Just because, it is, and especially like, you throw that Midland tournament in back in the day, it was a dogfight, man. I mean, it was a grinder. And if you placed the Midlands, it was obviously a big deal. But for the most part, Midland's is kind of dead now, especially after COVID. It kind of died out. And then a lot of teams started moving to what's called the Southern Scuffle down Tennessee, Chattanooga. Iowa started the Soldier Salute. And then I believe, and then this past Saturday, they had out in Vegas, which is the Cliff Keen Las Vegas tournament. And a lot of teams actually kind of use that as their Midlands now. Is Cliff Keen? It's either Cliff Keen, Southern Scuffle, or Soldier is the three big ones. There's not really just one big preseason national or pre-national tournament, if you will. They just kind of spread out.
Mm. Well, all good stuff. Excellent stuff. Excellent commentary. Tell us about where we can find your podcast.
Absolutely, yeah. So every Wednesday it drops. You can find it on Apple or Spotify. You can either type in Weighing In with Worm, or I'm under what's under an umbrella called the Dubuque Area Sports Podcast. So we have an umbrella there. Nick Maiman, he's the head guy. He covers football, baseball, and basketball. I cover wrestling. So, but if you just go onto Apple or Spotify and you type in Weighing In with Worm, it's here's a little, it's WEIGHIN, not weigh in with Worm. You type in that, it should be there. It usually drops every Wednesday. For the most part right now, this time of the year, I'm just covering Dubuque area high school and college wrestling. I have weekly awards on my social media, so I started adding interviews with high school athletes as well. So I do throw in some Iowa talk every once in a while, just because I know, especially around here, we have a lot of Iowa wrestling fans. And if not for nothing, like I have friends now that basically became Iowa wrestling fans because of waiting for an Iowa basketball game to come on Big Ten, and Iowa was wrestling before them, and they start becoming like I have this one buddy that never watched wrestling a day in his life, and then all of a sudden, like every time I see him now, he's talking to me like I'm talking to you guys right now. So I feel it's just fun for me to like see fans that convert like that, and so if I'm able to talk about it on the podcast and help grow it a little bit, let's do it.
Absolutely. Well, we are excited and thrilled that you were able to join us tonight. And hopefully down the road, maybe we could get you back on a couple of different times and maybe we talk about some of the bigger tournaments and some of the bigger matches that we've got coming up. And we can hit it maybe a little more focused on like the individuals and that kind of thing. But we wanted to kind of keep this one on a kind of a more general topic with Iowa. But we're gonna maybe we'll try to work something out with you to come back periodically throughout the season.
Absolutely, I'd love to come back.
And maybe just hit we'd love to have you back. We're gonna go ahead now, and we're gonna try to start wrapping things up. Is there anything else that you want to add to what we've already said, Jeremy or Worm?
No, man. Just if you get a chance, or fans out there that are watching that aren't Iowa wrestling fans, just make sure that if you see it scrolling through the TV, watch it, man. It's the only way they can grow the sport. And I mean, you'll never watch anything more fun, in my opinion, than Iowa wrestling. But other than that, go Hawks.
Absolutely, go Hawks all day long.
I will say I have definitely watched my fair share of wrestling on the Big Ten Network for Iowa, but it's not a sport that I really understand that much. I kind of get the scoring a little bit, but I'm like, I don't know who the guys really are.
And that's the thing, man. I mean, if once you become a fan and you start, following like me, like you start to develop almost personal. You guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. I probably can't tell you 4 of the starting Iowa football players. I can watch an Iowa football game. I understand the game. But I don't have that personal investment like that a lot of people do. But I look at like a Drake Ayala. Yeah. Drake Ayala I've been watching since he was in 7th grade. Fort Dodge kid. He's been lighting it up his entire career. He's a guy that I get invested with. And then I have guys that I've just met along the way. You kind of just develop personal interest in these guys. You want to see them well, because that's the thing about wrestling too. It's an individual sport. You're not going to be able to blame the line for a bad pass. If you give up a takedown or get pinned, hey, that's on you, man. That's That doesn't on anyone else. So,
absolutely.
So you develop those things, and and that's
right.
and if anything else too, if you are becoming an Iowa fan or you are an Iowa wrestling fan, lay off a little bit, man. I've been to Carver for the last 2 seasons, a season ticket holder, and there's some guys that I sit around that I know just listening to them, they don't know a damn thing about wrestling, but yet they're yelling at these wrestlers like they think that they know everything about it, and I'm sitting there just like, bro, you're poking a bear at Jacob Warner, and Jacob Warner's a 5-time All-American. You were probably a JV wrestler, for 2 years. So stay in your lane, man.
Yeah, 100%. That's what we're doing. Is we're staying in our lane. That's what we have you on.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to wrap up. First of all, I want to say that we've got merchandise out there for everybody, and I'm wearing a quarter zip. It's a real nice quarter zip. I don't know if you can see that or not. That's the logo. It's quarter zip. Really nice. It's a lightweight zip, so you can actually put stuff over the top of it and not be all bulky and stuff. It's a nice little. I like the fabric. We've gotten some orders, and I know we're running a 10% off through the holiday, and we're excited to get that kicked off. And like I said, we talked about this before. We're not making a ton of money on it. We're actually not making much at all on it, but that's okay, and that's not what we're in it for. So we're in it to have a good time and have an enjoyable podcast for people. We do have a question of the week, and it is wrestling related, and I did bring this one up, and you don't have to answer it because we're going to let people answer it. But if you know the answer, keep it to yourself, Jeremy.
Okay.
You know this probably. Okay. Iowa has won the national title in wrestling how many times? And if you know, put it in the comments. Let us know. We'll put this on Facebook. You can answer the question there as well. But I'm not going to give you any hints. If you know, you know. If you don't, you'll have to look it up. Or you can guess, I guess, and try it that way. But Keith, you want to take over for the rest of it with all the stuff that you like to talk about, the social media?
Yeah. Just make sure you're liking the content, whether here, subscribing. If you're not already subscribed, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Still working on getting Blue Sky up and going, but I'm sure that'll be before long.
Been kind of blowing up on TikTok the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. I think we get some of that controversial SEC stuff in there for football, and it tends to bring out the crazies or the rabid fans, I should say. I shouldn't call them crazies because everybody's rabid. Everybody's opinion's valid. I don't agree with them, but hey, whatever. But yeah, it's been fun. It's definitely been something interesting to see with kind of taking off a little bit like that. Also, you catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. There's another medium out there that I don't even remember what it's called. It's podcast, some platform, something or other. There's a lot of places you can catch us at now. Just show us some support. Check out you'll also see the link pop up here. There's going to be a QR code pop up throughout this video with a link to our merchandise store. Feel free to jump in there. There's things down in the $6 range all the way up to about $50. So, there's stuff for everybody. There's blankets, there's coasters, shot glasses, T-shirts, whatever, anything that you tickles your fancy, so to speak.
Yeah.
And if there's something that you'd like to see, let me know. I can always whip up a design and throw it out there too. So we appreciate the support, and we appreciate everybody that listens. And
thank you, Worm, for coming on again.
Guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up with a rousing Go Hawks.
Ready?
Here we go. Go Hawks.